Microphone check 2 1 2. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to It's the Bearded Man podcast with your favorite, the world's favorite bearded man, Bobby. Doesn't that come off so smooth every single time? I got a big old grin on my face when I come into that intro every single week. Every podcast, baby. Can't stop, won't stop, let's go. Ladies and gentlemen, it's November. How is that even possible? Still very much remember March when the world shut down due to COVID, and I cannot believe it is already November. Fortunately for your boy living in Southern California, the weather does adjust. It does get quote-unquote colder out here, but cold is a different feeling for me growing up on the Northeast, aka Massachusetts. So it's a beautiful thing to live out in California, and you definitely appreciate, let me say Southern California, and you definitely appreciate the sunshine in the winter months. But I love it. Don't know if I'll ever go back. Anyway, just crazy to think it's November, and I'm weirdly excited just to finish the year strong for such a, for lack of a better word, a fucked up year for everybody. And so, yeah, we're just going full throttle for the rest of the year. I am doing this whole month, 30 days of morning gratitude in my journal. And I challenge anyone out there, you won't hear this till Thursday, and by then it'll already be 4 days into it. But if you're looking to do a little challenge, I'm challenging anyone out there that wants to go for it. Morning gratitude journal every morning. If you need topics or you need an outline, hit me up and I'll provide it to you. But it's a good way to start your day, and I feel more gratitude for the day, because human beings, as stubborn as we are, and I'll dive into a podcast on gratitude in a couple weeks when I wrap up the 30 days. We're stubborn human beings, ladies and gentlemen. As you probably know, as we all know, we always want more, and we can never be content, and we can never be satisfied and grateful for what we have in our life today. It's always about the next thing. And so I'm trying to rewire my brain in the way that I see the things in my life and remind myself daily, be grateful, be grateful, be grateful. So November's here, Gratitude Bob's here. We're cruising along. Quick Halloween recap. Your boy was Lumberjack Bob. And let me just say, that was an absolute fail. Most people came up to me thinking, yo, nice costume, bro. Are you a farmer? Hey, no, I'm actually not a farmer. Look at this beard. Lumberjacks got this style beard, not farmers. Farmers may have beards, but they don't have this type of beard. I had the overalls. I had orange flannel. I actually got to plug up my roommate because he provided me the clothes. Shout out to Steve. He owns 5starvintage.com. If any of you guys and gals want some vintage wear, go to 5starvintage.com, the number 5starvintage.com. And he's got some great stuff. So I went into our garage where he runs his business. Not our business, his business. And that's what I came up with. Walked in as the bearded man Bob. Hey, walked out as Lumberjack Bob. Costume failed, but hey, you know what? At least I did. I tried, At least I showed up and I actually dressed up. There was a success that we did bounce around and hit a couple Halloween parties, which was interesting. Ended up at some party in Encino, which for those who don't live in LA, it's pretty much, the hills of LA. Crazy view of the valley. Super LA. Like Lambo out front, Range Rover, a lot of cars. I was actually on the phone with my parents yesterday. I talked to them every Sunday via FaceTime, and they were asking how the party was. And my dad goes, yeah, were they handing out candy? I said, nope. They were handing out Blocaine, bird, a.k.a. cocaine. Because that's what happens in that's what happens in the hills of California, LA. Was your boy touching it? No. Wasn't even touching booze. I think I had maybe 2 shots of tequila on Halloween night. I've been really dialing back. The 75 days of no booze really kind of woke me up to some things, and just the upside that I saw in that stretch of not touching booze has just completely transformed the way I personally consume it. I don't have anything against people out there consuming it, so please, if you're going to have a drink, have one in the name of Bobby, the bearded man. But I definitely have noticed a change in the way I feel about it, and me personally knowing how it affects me. And so I think I addressed this in the 75 Days No Booze podcast, but for me moving forward, it's just about being much more aware of how much I'm consuming. And don't get me wrong, there's for sure going to be some slip-ups here and there. I'm going to have to send it full throttle, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's going to be some times where that happens, and it'll be fine. We'll just let it fly. But I think much more aware of how much I'm consuming. So, anywho, that was great. Halloween weekend, success, fail on my costume, doesn't matter, had a great time. Today we had a big day, actually. The first woman on the podcast for It's the Bearded Man podcast. This is a big deal for me because I used to get a lot of heat from people on my old show, Purpose in the Youth, and I even noticed it too. I didn't do a good job of balancing and having male and females. It was very, very male skewing. I mean, I don't know how many. I don't know what the percentage is, but all of it was mostly guys. And so I'm trying to make a conscious effort to get more females involved in this podcast. And you're probably like, yeah, Bob, hey, it's 40 episodes in. You finally got your first one. I know it's bad, but good news. I got another one coming for the next week's episode, and then one 2 weeks after that. So we're making it happen. But Kaylee Christina, what an incredible episode. She's a co-founder of Clear Stem Skincare. She is the host of Balance Your Hustle podcast, and she's also an author. Fellas, because this is a very high skewing male show, and I can say that, and any ladies out there, thank you for tuning in and listening. But fellas, listen up to this podcast. Take some notes on two things. One, skincare. Start prioritizing it. I know it seems like the girly thing to do. Nope, we're making it cool. Start prioritizing that skincare. And secondly, Kaylee gives some tips on relationships. So you boys out there that are very surface level conversationalists, let's take it deep a little bit. You know what I'm saying? So what just an incredible podcast. We dive into a lot of great topics. And I think just for the first female guest of It's the Bearded Man podcast, set the bar extremely high. Very vulnerable podcast. Kaylee dives into some personal things that she's been going through in 2020, and ultimately just really pumped to get the first woman on the podcast, get some more in the pipeline, and yeah, really excited how that came out. Also, side note, before we get into today's podcast, just started Schitt's Creek last night on Netflix. Been hearing a lot about it, and finally caved in. My God, am I pumped that I did. 3 eps, crushed last night. I was literally crying, laughing in my room by myself, solo dolo. If anyone out there needs suggestions for Netflix, if you're looking for a good laugh, Schitt's Creek, you won't be mad. You won't be disappointed. All right, so majority of these solo pods that I do, I usually have something I'm inspired to talk about or that's relevant to my life. And I wanted to change it up for this week because truthfully, I didn't really have anything that I was inspired to talk about. So went to IG, put up a little questionnaire, and I said, any topics or questions that you guys and gals want me to talk about on a podcast, drop it below. Had some really good, thoughtful topics and questions, some that I definitely want to talk about in the coming weeks. But the one that caught my attention is from my girl, Alexa Whittington. Hopefully, Alexa, I said your name right, and if I didn't, I am so sorry. But she asked a really good question. She said, what is the most important thing you've learned about yourself during the pandemic? I think if you guys and gals have been listening to my podcast and follow me on IG, I've put out a lot of positivity during this time and how I've been trying to cope with this downtime. And I mean, even in the last couple months, to be completely honest with you, there is a lot of things are still closed in LA, but I definitely have been going out and throwing myself out there and doing my best to follow guidelines and not be an idiot. But I definitely have been throwing myself out there. So yeah, I've learned a lot about myself. The short answer for what we're going to get into today would be that there is no progress without effort for my own life. That's what I've realized about myself, because there are times that I find myself complaining, or have found in the past complaining about areas of my life where I'm lacking, where things aren't really going the way I wish they were going. And then I recently during this pandemic, I've had to pull myself back, and I have to be honest with myself and go, Bobby, have you been giving this area of your life the proper amount of effort that it needs to change? AKA consistency. Have you been consistently working on this area of your life that you want to change? And then under that, if so, how long have you been putting in that effort, aka patience? And this is something that I've learned about myself during this pandemic because I've had a lot of downtime to reflect. And so the sentence that I continuously have been reminding myself, and I've talked about in recent podcasts, is there is no progress without effort. So today we're going to peel that back, and I'm going to talk about that is something that I've learned about myself, and it helps me stay consistent with areas of my life I'm working on. It allows me to be patient, and it allows me to see the bigger picture of what I'm working towards. But before we get into that podcast, this podcast, I shall say, you guys know, and gals, you guys and gals know what I need from you. This is all that I ask. If at any point during this podcast, I make you smile, I make you laugh, you learn something, you're entertained, insert any emotion. If you enjoy any moment of this podcast, all that I ask, please screenshot this episode, post it to your IG story, tag me at Bob, B-O, 3 B's, 4 A's, and a Y, and I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. I know you guys and gals are so sick of me talking about it, but guess what? It helps. It's growing this podcast organically, and that's what we want. We want to grow this thing from the ground up. We want to turn this BMC, aka the Bearded Man community, worldwide. You know what I'm saying? So shout out to everybody out there that's listening, and shout out to those who are supporting. So, like I said, any moment in time you enjoy this podcast, screenshot it, post it to your IG story, tag me at Bobby, B-O, 3 B's, 4 A's, and a Y, and I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. Back to the episode. Okay. Pandemic downtime. At first, everybody's freaking out, aka myself included. But then I started to lean into it very quickly. I've been leaning into this downtime. And there have been, honestly, a lot of pros. There has been so much more me time, which could go one of two ways for probably a lot of people, either really good or really bad. But for me, it's been mostly really, really positive. There's no more commuting to and from work. I only live 10, 15 minutes from our office. So that's 30 minutes a day. But I would add in another 30 in case there's traffic, you know what I'm saying? In case I got to stop and get some gas along the way. And also, too, having to get ready to go to work, pack the lunch, look good, make the beer look good. It's honestly really lovely waking up, throwing on a hoodie, throwing on sweatpants, and not worrying about looking perfect, not putting on shoes. I got my slippers on. It's great. So I've gotten at least 60 minutes a day back on from that. There's just more quietness in my day because I'm working remote. I'm doing what I got to do, but there's nobody pulling on me to grab my attention other than my two roommates that I live with. We're all pretty much just locked in doing what we need to do. I have a full hour to myself during my lunch. We have 1 hour, in the office, we have an hour lunch, and that's what I give myself while working remote. So that's 60 minutes per day. So even just 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, you're talking 2 hours a day, 10 hours a week that comes back to me. So I've had so much more time to myself, which, like I said, can go one of two ways, really good or really bad. I've tried to use it for the positive, which we'll dive into today. And I've spent a lot of time reflecting and thinking about and just deep work of having honest conversations with myself about what makes me happy, about what I need to work on, about the direction I'm headed. What does my free time look like when I'm not working? A lot of these questions I've had to kind of work through in the last couple months. A couple other areas that have been really great. And this will all full circle, I promise. This will all full circle. I've had a lot more time to do some reading. It's been really, really helpful in trying to find the answers within myself, reading stories and reading books that interest me. I'll give 3 shout outs to 3 books that I've really enjoyed during this quarantine. One would be Can't Stop Me by David Goggins. Excellent read. Number 2 would be Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty. I would potentially, honestly, put that as probably my number 1 book of all time. And that'll probably be the number 1 book that I suggest for others to read. So if you're looking for a book to read, I highly suggest starting with this one. And then thirdly would be Deep Kindness by Houston Kraft, who is a past podcast guest on Purpose in the Youth, my old show. Shout out to him. He published his book about a month ago. Incredible book. I think it's back ordered on Amazon, but I highly suggest you guys and gals check that out as well. So I've had a lot of time to read. And from time to time, I get people that ask me, Bob, you got any book suggestions? Yes. I do. And I purposely have built out a link on my website for you guys and gals if you're ever looking for books to read. So if you're looking for something, go to itsthebeardedman.com. Yes, you better believe that's my website. itsthebeardedman.com. Scroll to the bottom where it says Bearded Man Resources and it says Book Suggestions. Click on that link and I have pictures of all the books that I've been reading, the titles, and when you click on the actual title, it brings you directly to Amazon to purchase. I'm making your life pretty simple. But it's also making my life simple because I get people that DM me going, Bob, hey, what book should I read? And I send them that link and I let them pick. So if you're looking for a book, it's thebeardedman.com. So that's been another big pro. I've been able to spend a lot more time reading and learning from other people's stories and just deep diving into my own self while I'm reading these books. Pretty much reflecting, I would say. Picked up new hobbies, surfing. Haven't been talking about that a lot. But picked up a new hobby of surfing. Well, I talked about it a lot in previous podcasts. I haven't gone surfing in probably like 4 or 5 weeks right now. Pretty bad, I know. Got a wetsuit. I'll definitely get back into it sometime in the coming weeks. It's just been difficult to make that happen. But that has been a pro. During this COVID time, I've been able to pick up a new hobby of surfing, which I've loved. Another big area of my life that I've worked on. I know you guys are so pumped about this one. I picked up the mic again, baby. It's the Bearded Man podcast is in full swing. It feels like just yesterday, July. I remember I was flying back from Massachusetts after being home. I had just put out my first podcast in a long time before flying back, and I had this vision. I said, when I get back from Massachusetts, I'm going full throttle, and that's what we've done. July, August, September, October. I mean, we'll go 3. We won't count July because it was kind of towards the end when I got back. But August, September, October, consistently 2 episodes a week, 1 solo, 1 guest pod, and it's been great. It's been incredible. We're getting everything in motion. Still got a lot to learn. Still got a lot more room to grow. But it feels good to be back in the podcast space. I feel like I have my voice again. And then one of the other areas that I would say has been a big pro of during this pandemic that I've been working on is meeting and building community of great people. Saying yes a lot more instead of saying no, going to workout classes, attending dinners or small gatherings. Even if I'm tired and I'm just like, I don't really want to go, I could just like relax. I tell myself, send it. Go meet people. You know this is an area of your life you want to work on. Just go do it. So those are some of the areas that I have been working on, right? And so there is no progress without effort. Remember, that's what we're getting to. This is all going to make sense. I'm just trying to give you guys a little backlog of how these areas of my life I've been making progress because I've been putting in the effort. But before that, I got to be honest, I am for sure my biggest critic. I always have been. And ever since I was a child, when I get my eyes on the prize or a vision, I just go all in and I don't stop until I get to that thing. And I don't need anybody to tell me any negative criticism because I am my biggest critic. And so because of being my biggest critic and because of this downtime, that's when I started to reflect on the areas of my life that I had been lacking. Okay? I was getting frustrated with myself about not having a strong, authentic community, not being in the podcast space anymore because I pretty much had stopped Purpose in the Youth, and I kind of had started this, but it was like once a month. I had no skin in the dating game. There was a point during this pandemic, I'd say probably June, July, like the first 3 months, I was giving myself a little leeway because everybody was trying to figure it out. And then things started opening again, and there's a little bit more room to actually live life somewhat again with masks and social distancing. But then I started being honest with myself, and I was getting frustrated. Like, I didn't really have, other than the 2 roommates that I've lived with in LA for the last 3 years who are incredible people, I didn't really have like a true community out here. I didn't have the podcast voice, as I said, and there was no skin in the dating game. So I was getting frustrated with myself about these areas of my life that it just wasn't happening. And I don't know if it was a podcast I listened to or maybe a book that I read, but I then looked at it from the perspective of like, why are you going to get mad at yourself about these areas that you don't have the best grip on yet when you haven't even been putting in effort? How can you expect these areas of your life to be going good if you're not putting any effort to make it happen? You ever heard the line, the phone works both ways? So sometimes somebody wants to blame you like, oh, you never hit me up, or you never shoot me a text, you never invite me. Okay, cool. But do you hit me up? Hey, do you text me? Hey, do you invite me to these events? If the answer is yes, then you're kind of screwed. But if the answer is no, that's where you go, hey, buddy, phone works both ways. Why don't you hit me up, or maybe I'll hit you up. And that's and I guess this is what I'm trying to say is that I've had to be honest with myself and understand that whether it's career, whether it's personal health, whether it's passion projects like this, whether it's the dating game, whether it's community, I cannot expect there to be progress without me putting in the effort. I love to knock myself down when these certain areas of my life aren't perfect or aren't going great. I'm a perfectionist. I want to be well balanced. I want all these different, like any of you guys and gals, honestly, I'm sure all of you want all of these different buckets of your life to be going well. But when they're not going well for me, it gets to my head, and I get obsessed about making progress and about getting better with it. And so now that I've been putting effort into these certain buckets of my life that I've wanted to make that effort or to change, these are the questions that I keep asking myself. Have I been constantly, because here's the thing, before I say the questions, we get frustrated when we're not making progress, right? So maybe we start putting in the effort, but then we're like not making the progress that we want to see. And so then again, these are the questions that I ask myself. Have I been consistently making effort, or have I been half-assing this? And then secondly, how long have I stayed consistent with putting effort into this area of my life? A week, a month, a year? I got to be real with myself. And so now that I've been consciously aware and putting effort into these areas of my life that I feel like I was neglecting, I'm starting to see things finally come to life, and I'm starting to see much better results, and I'm not spreading my energy into just only a couple buckets in my life. I'm spreading it across evenly. I'm doing my best to spread it across evenly, because that's what I've realized. That's what I've learned about myself. There is no progress without effort in my life unless I make the effort. If I want change, I have to put in the effort. It sounds so simple, but yet somehow I have found myself in the recent past couple months, where I'm frustrated with my own self because I haven't made the progress that I want, and then I have to dial it back. I have to look at it from a different perspective and go, yo, one, you haven't even been putting effort into this area of life. How in the world are you going to expect this to be better? And then two, even if you have, how long have you been working on this, Bobby? You got to be patient, brother. You got to stay consistent, but you got to be patient. So let's break down 3 areas that I've been focusing on, and I'll provide a little bit of a clarity and some context. One is building community, like I talked about. So I talked about this on a podcast that I had already released on episode 29. And this was just an area of my life that I neglected for a long time. I just wasn't putting effort into it. And ever since I moved out to LA in September of 2017, just was not, it wasn't on my radar. It was driving Uber full time to pay the bills, and it was building Purpose in the Youth, my old podcast project. Other than that, it was all business. But the last 3 months, I have been making some incredible strides. Like I said, going to workout classes, joined a running group, trying new passions, which ultimately helps me meet new people, saying yes to things more than I say no, like events, and just throwing myself out there, going places where I don't know a single soul, but I trust and believe that I'm going to meet people, and I just keep saying yes. And it takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of time, and honestly sacrifice to a certain extent, because you're sacrificing your time. But I have been seeing progress. And I have to remind myself that I have to continuously put in this work, put in this effort in order to see the progress. I'm a social butterfly. I just want to be able to live in LA and experience a lot of different things with a lot of different people. And that's not possible unless I'm going out there and I'm meeting new people. And it's been incredible, just ride of meeting all these incredible people that I've been meeting out here on the west side of LA. And it amazes me how when you just throw yourself out there, the world kind of does the rest, as long as you're patient and as long as you're consistent. So because I was saying yes more and I was throwing myself out there, I have been making a lot of progress within building community. Still got a lot more room to grow, but I keep putting in effort weekly. So that has been crucial. Number 2 would be building this podcast. Definitely lost my identity in the process of taking this job with Liquid IV back in October of 2019. Absolutely worth it. As I talked about in last week's podcast, episode 39, hitting my 1 year with Liquid IV. There is absolutely no regret with taking this job, but I had to pivot. And at the time when I was stopping Purpose in the Youth because I was taking this job, it felt like I was losing my identity, I was losing my voice. But it ultimately was the best thing that could have happened to me because it allowed me to rebrand and start this new podcast in this new direction. And so had I not stopped the project to take the job, I never would have started this podcast, or maybe it would have taken me a lot longer to get to this point. So I feel super grateful that that all happened. But now I'm starting to find this rhythm. Like I said, in the last 3 months, I found this rhythm of 1 podcast a week solo, 1 podcast a week guests, 2 pods a week. That's 8 pods a month. And we just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And some of you guys and gals might be like, why do you do it? You have a job, you have a career. Why are you still doing this? I love people. This is an incredible platform to meet new people, to network, and to just record really authentic conversations and share it with the world. That was something that me and Kaylee on episode 40 talked about, was like surface level conversations. I don't have the time for it. I kind of just skip that and get right to the juice of it. And that's what I think the world needs more of. And so I hope that through solo pods and then the guest pods, I hope that I can provide really deep and authentic conversations for people to listen into. Because I know that there are people out there that might not be surrounded by like-minded people or growth mindset people. And if you aren't having these conversations about just doing bigger things than yourself, it's kind of hard to actually find the belief in yourself to actually go out there and do these things. And so I have seen such a huge upside in the last couple of years of listening to podcasts and learning from experts and people that have walked an incredible journey of life that I, admire. And so I hope that these conversations and podcasts can provide some type of inspiration or insight for people out there. So underneath that, just in general, I just love sharing my voice, and I love sharing the story with the world and just being authentic and vulnerable. And as I've talked about before, these solo pods, I feel like sometimes are like a therapy session for me, because I'm able to get things off my chest and share what I want to share and spread it around the world. Whether 5 people listen, 10 people, 100, it doesn't matter. It just feels so good to just put it out there to the world, put it out there and just, I don't know, see who listens, see where it ends up. And it just feels good. And I guess ultimately, where am I headed with all this podcast stuff? I don't know. I really don't. I mean, if I could speak anything into existence, it'd be, a studio with multiple cameras, very minimalist, and a really just welcoming environment for guests and for people to have these really great conversations. But I'm so just going with the flow of it. There's no deadlines. There's no, by the end of this year, I got to have 20 million downloads. I just kind of keep doing it. And I think that's shows me and reminds me I'm doing it for the right reasons. And it's truly something I'm passionate about, because I'm doing this without worrying about what the results are. Because how podcasting has got me to where I am today is incredible. And where it could take me further, I have no idea, but I'm going to trust it, because I I just know this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and it gives me purpose to my life. The stuff that I deal with, Liquid IV, our podcast media spend, incredible opportunity. It's taught me the entire business side of podcasting, analytical, very different part of my brain to then when I switch over to do these. This is very creative, and this is very allowing me to speak and share what I want with the world. So it's two different sides of the brain, but ultimately feels great. The third and last area that I've been focusing on would just be like intimate relationships. And I talked about this heavily on episode 37 about past experiences of relationships and how I've let society's expectations get to my head. Definitely the most vulnerable podcast I've ever shared and recorded, and was anxious, nervous, excited. I had every emotion checked off with sharing that podcast out there to the world, but I felt like it was the right thing to do, and it has proven to be the right thing to do based on the feedback that I've gotten from people. So that this is an area that I would say I'm putting effort into, but I'm also realizing to not force it. You can't force this part of your life. You have to just be open to the idea of it, but you can't go too hard with it, because if you're trying to force it like an intimate relationship with somebody else, it's probably not going to work out. And even like, even recently last week, I had this moment where once again, I let this shit get to my head. I don't know what it is, but I allow it to get to my head, and I know what it is. It's conversations that I have with other males that talk to me about, girls that they're spitting game to and their hookup stories, and then I get into my own head and I start questioning my own decision making and all this stuff that I talked about in the recent podcast. But I'm also starting to be a little bit more loving to my own self about the fact that I let this shit get to my head, because I've realized that we are emotional human beings, and experiences impact us all differently. So what I've learned is I can't judge how this experience affects me or how it might affect somebody else. You kind of have to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and try to understand where they're coming from, even in a moment where in your mind you go, why is this bothering them so much? Why are they still caught up on this that happened 6 months ago, a year ago? Every experience is different for everybody, and you don't fully understand what somebody's going through. Even if you've been through something similar, that chatter in our mind, we don't understand what it is like for somebody else. And so all we can do is have empathy and compassion for other people and for whatever they're going through. And so even in the times where I get frustrated and I compare myself to other males and what they're going through within, their own intimate relationships or who they're sleeping with, blah, blah, blah. I remind myself like, Babe, you're good. Just keep focusing on you. Keep that self-love within you. It's gonna be all right. And it does get to my head. But like I was just saying, I'm also realizing that this is an area of my life I cannot force. I can put effort into. And for the last couple of years, I was very closed off and I wouldn't put any effort. This is an area that I should be putting effort into once again. There is no progress without effort. And so I'm throwing myself out there to these environments to meet people and trusting that when it's supposed to happen, it will happen. That it can sound spiritual and weird or like I understand that whole idea of like trust the world and trust the process, and when the flow of life wants to give it to you, it'll happen. I know that sounds so wishy-washy, and I understand if you don't vibe with what I'm saying, but I try to believe that things will happen when it's supposed to, and whenever that's going to happen, it'll happen. And in the meantime, I'm just going to keep reinvesting in myself and keep putting in time and energy into myself. So what we've talked about today, a reminder, there is no progress without effort. That is what I've learned about myself within this pandemic. I get frustrated about the progress in my life or certain areas that I'm trying to put and make progress in. And then I ask myself, how much effort have you actually been putting in that area of your life, Bob A., Mr. Bearded Man? Have you actually been putting in effort? So the 4 daily reminders that I remind myself of is 1, continuously make effort by staying consistent. Number 2, have some patience because nothing is going to dramatically change overnight or in a few weeks. Number 3 would be optimistic. The good things will come. And number 4 would be pat yourself on the back for showing up and making an effort. Pat yourself on the back, Bobby. You're trying. But ultimately, there is no progress without effort, ladies and gentlemen. That is something I've realized about myself during this pandemic. And once I was able to make that realization, and instead of like allowing these thoughts to dig me deeper of like, I haven't made any progress in this area of my life, boo-hoo, frown, lame, negative energy, nobody wants to hear you complain. Once I've confronted that and realized I am actually in control, I'm the one who can make the change. I can't rely on other people. I can't rely on other external factors. It is on me to do what is necessary to make a change in my life if there's something I want to work on or get better at. Doesn't have to be, it can be anything. Personal, career, relationships, family, passion projects, building community, you name it. The only way we get better at it is by putting in effort. And within that effort, it takes time and consistency. So, to answer Alexa's question, what have I learned about myself during this pandemic? That I can make progress in any area of my life so long as I am willing to put in the proper amount of effort to make change. So my challenge to you guys and gals, ask yourself what areas of your life do you want to see changes in, and consider the effort that you are putting into it. Could you be putting in more effort, or are you not putting in any effort at all? If there's something in your life you want to get better at or you want to be stronger in, ask yourself, are you putting in any effort? And if yes, could you put in more effort? And even past that, how long have you been putting in that effort? I don't care what area of your life it is, it takes time. Accept it, fall in love with that concept of patience, and just look for the little bit of progress you can make in a day or even in the week. Little progress is better than no progress. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed today's podcast, you know the drill. Screenshot this episode, post it to your IG story, tag me at Bob-A, B-O, 3 B's, 4 A's, and a Y. Share it out with your IG fam and tell them to go check out the Bearded Man podcast, because you know this is how we grow the podcast, one episode at a time, by you guys and gals sharing it out. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. There is no progress without effort. Put in that effort. You can make change and progress within any area of your life. And I for sure have learned that about myself during this pandemic. We will be back soon enough. More content on the way. It's November. Join me on the gratitude journaling challenge of daily gratitude. And if you start late, if you start, first week of November, second week, it's fine. Go for a full 30 days. That's the goal. 30 days of consistent journaling about gratitude within your own life. And I think you'll feel differently. That's it. Hope you guys and gals have a great rest of your day, morning, afternoon, night, whatever you're doing. Just do it great. We'll see you guys and gals soon enough. It's your boy, Bob Bay, signing off. See ya.